Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening. I don't know what time zone you're in, but you are now in the Jazz Zone. My name is Roscoe Lee Owens, and I am your host in the Jazz Zone. And as I say most times, a show like none other, we have for you the opportunity to meet my son, a wonderful author, a strong human being. Please put your hands together. Well, I'll do that for you. Mr. Thomas Kijana Owens, how you doing?
I'm doing fine, sir. I'm doing fine. Glad to be back in town. Glad to be back.
Back on the block. That's what this series is about on this show.
Yeah.
First of all, Thomas Kijana Owens, I'm going to start with the opportunity to call you by what I know they've called you throughout your life, and that is Kijana. Yep, that's the way we go. Back on the block with Kijana. Now, you are living in Texas, and you've come out back to Pasadena, Altadena, and let's start from there.
Wow, you know, it's been a fantastic journey for me. It's been a journey that at one point of it you think you see no way out of, and at another point you just like, man, you know, where am I? And you start seeing a little bit better and better and better and better, man, and my life is right now great. You know, married, got 2 beautiful daughters, and I miss Pasadena. I'm from here. A lot of my friends, they calling me the prodigal son because I've been gone. I've been on my sojourn, and I'm back now. But, you know, Pasadena is a great city. I'm glad to be back. I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, Pasadena's prodigal son, and you're absolutely right. A lot of your friends that I've seen grow up with you are strong young men and women with families doing what they're doing. But you've had a special journey, and let's start with some of that. Let's just go right into what's happening with your journey. You left Pasadena and you're back, and there's a lot of in between.
A lot of in between. I grew up here, great friends, great family. I mean, my whole foundation was always solid. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us to be able to sit here and do this as businessmen, men of the community, men of standard, men of stature, and doing some things that I think can inspire others, you know, to get themselves on track. Without really taking it into, you know, how long it took me to get there, but the foundation being set by you, I didn't want to follow it. You know, our young men, we got to find our own ways. We don't want to go by what, you know, dad said, my dad is this. So I took that whole thing, and, you know, I had our thing coming up, just like a lot of young men in this community grow up and they have a thing against their fathers, but you've been a great man. But me, I took all the lessons in life that I had, great schooling, great friends, and like I said before, but I love the streets. I had to run the streets. I had to have the fast money, I had to have the fast cars, I had to have the fast girls, I had to have all of those things that in one big old ball of wax accumulated to a failing scenario that I thought. But it became something, was a learning process for me. Mm-hmm. I've been to prison, and through prison, while I became something in prison that I wasn't raised with, I became something that you taught me. You raised me on morals and ethics and discipline and guidelines and structure. And when I went against that, I took myself into a situation in the world that, you know, is destructive. And me being from here, I'm back today to apologize too. So I feel good about that. I feel good about being able to give back, come back, sharing, talking to the kids. I'm involved with a few youth outreach programs in Texas and as well as out here. Looking forward to doing a lot of that. But overall, you know, my story took me way, way into the pit.
Well, let me ask you about that, because in the introduction, it says author. Now, I know that you were published in a national magazine some years ago. Let's talk about that, since you brought up prison, and I know that you wrote from there. It's not many people that get published, and there's definitely not many African American men in prison that get published in a national magazine. Let's go with that particular part of your journey.
Yeah, it was a fantastic experience. I really I wrote from the heart, like I'm here to speak from the heart. Actually, I wrote an article to Sister magazine about my relationship with my then fiance, Latasha. And I just, spoke from what I felt about how black men should honor and respect black women. And from there, it was something that spurred in me. Like I was accepted, my writing was printed, and from there, it's like, wow, well, maybe what I'm thinking and feeling inside my heart, my mind and soul is coming out on this pen is viable, to somebody besides myself. And it was an awakening while I was inside and began to share and express myself in poetic format. And that it just was very freeing, very freeing. And from there, I began to be able to be free inside. It's something I don't know, unless you write, it's something that you just don't understand, that allows you to let that part of you go, the part that you think and feel inside, and let it live and breathe and others to enjoy.
The magazine, it's a national magazine, Sisters to Sister. How did it make you feel to be a man that they thought your work was worthy to publish like that? And being inside at the same time. What did you think about that?
Well, inside is a beast of its own, and it was something that it got me another kind of respect, because you can be respected on so many fronts, but when you become respected for your mind and your internal fortitude, it's something that speaks to who you really are. And that's how I got back to the foundation that you, my father, and my mother had set earlier in my life from an infant. And that was the freeing spirit at that time that enlightened me and allowed me to be able to express myself in ways that I had never before. And for it to be a woman's magazine was a great thing as well, because they're looking for a man's point of view. And it was great, It was great. It was a great feeling.
Well, especially it's Juneteenth, which is very, very important for African Americans as it relates to that particular holiday, and in the culmination of Father's Day, which makes me very proud, because on the other end of that spectrum, for me to pick up a magazine where my son is being published, knowing the journey that he's in, at the time, was very proudful, and I could understand you coming and becoming more involved in your creativity. And I'm going to say at that point, the creativity is already in the family, from the picture behind me of my dad, Jimmy Owens, the drummer, being a very creative person, and it just seems to continue to flow. Now, with that, I know you did more writings in your poetic format. I guess it became an internal function for you to just begin to create. Am I correct, or what?
Yes, I had been writing, but I had been writing and hiding my writing because I didn't feel, as a man, there's some things about us that we're not very nurturing with each other, so it's not cool to be intelligent. It's not very cool to speak intelligently, to have intellect and have thoughts and dreams and ideologies and these other kind of things that, speak to who you are as opposed to who you become or allowed yourself to become, especially in a situation like that. So once I wrote that article and it was accepted, now it was open to the whole public because the magazine comes inside. It's like, oh man, I seen it. And people had seen the article and they're like, wow, and then it was kind of like a freeing, like I said before, a freeing sense of self. And from there, I started writing my poetry and documenting and keeping it and getting it published. I had been published before. I think that it's just it's very good for the inside of me.
I understand that you spoke to a major audience of inmates and received a standing ovation as well.
Well, that was the first time that I had ever done public speaking. And it was actually we had started a group called the Secular Organization for Sobriety. And what it was a freeing brotherhood circle of brothers where we get together once a week and talk about our personal vices. And while it was a sobriety group, I think that our addiction, more than alcohol, or drugs, it was the addiction to the street. So we were able to free ourselves with each other and just talk about what was going on. You know, what's going on with you this week? Well, this week, you know, such and such my friend is in this situation and I want to do something to this person. You know, you got a lot of different people you're dealing with, and what we had was a avenue to vent frustrations and get good food and feedback that was good for the soul and the mind. And that began to allow me to see that my problems weren't even as bad as everybody. For one thing, I was in a situation in prison where I've got my father, I've got my mother, I've got my grandfather, I've got a legacy of family structure and friendship, where I'm in a situation where not many have it. But there's an epidemic of that because we take to the streets as a way of being cool. We're cool. And that pen allowed me to express my frustrations with myself, my frustrations with society, my frustrations with the educational system. And overall, it becomes the frustration with, you know, the man in the mirror, because nobody makes decisions for you but you.
You know, I know we were talking about, you know, men and crying inside, but you also have one of your poetic formatted writings on You Too Cool.
Yes, You Too Cool.
I mean, as you mentioned that, I you know, this is something that I think, do you have that?
I am not so much of a spoken word poet. I express what I'm feeling inside.
Yes.
And I have some associates that I do allow them, because they get the drum behind them, they get the music behind them, and they're much better at doing that. But the reason why I wrote You Too Cool, the philosophy behind the whole poem was that going through life as an imbecile, or, you know, I took myself as that for a time period. When I look back in retrospect, and hindsight being 2020,
yes,
like, man, I had to be crazy.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where You Too Cool came from. You too cool to go to school. You're too cool to be a father to this child that you created because of some kind of deal with the mom or some other, you know, lacking that you feel like you want to run from, and that's what we do. And then that's what that came from. That's what that came from.
You know, let's. I want to talk about the schedule that you have, because back on the block, and I know that you're here for a reason. If we can kind of share with the audience, and we could put up on screen the schedule of events that you have, I see that there are many things that you have. When we talk about one is Black Men Speak, Getting Down to Business. That's one of the events that you have coming up with a few friends of yours.
Yes, it's a great honor for that. I'm very pleased to have such a core